Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Paige McAllister, and I lead the RelTalks team on the Relevate team. Relevate is a multidisciplinary team of researchers and practitioners dedicated to increasing access to research on relationships. This is our very last RelTalk of the semester. We've had 5 other amazing ones that are all on YouTube that you can go search for and watch. But tonight, our presenter is Erin Cooper. Erin has a Bachelor's of Science in Psychology and Sociology, a Master's of Science in Marriage and Family Therapy, and is currently working on a PhD in Human Development and Family Studies at Auburn University. Erin has experience working with diverse families, couples, and individuals as a marriage and family therapist on a variety of presenting problems, including childhood trauma. She is also a certified family life educator and currently works with community-based relationship education programs where she has experience teaching youth and adults in the community about healthy relationships. Her research interests involve risk and resilience among participants in community-based programs focused on improving family, couple, and individual well-being. Both in and outside of her professional roles, Erin enjoys learning about and engaging in social justice advocacy. Outside of work, she enjoys film, music, and television, local live music and concerts, traveling and exploring new places. And throughout the pandemic, she learned to love nights in cross-stitching and playing Nintendo's Animal Crossing. So Erin, if you want to share your screen and take it away.
Thank you so much, Paige, for that introduction. Share screen, share computer sound. All right. And I also want to thank the Relevate team for having me and helping me develop this presentation this evening. And thank you to everyone here and anyone viewing in the future for taking the time to learn about childhood trauma, relationships, and mindfulness. Before we jump right in, I want to take a quick moment to let everyone check in with themselves, notice how you're feeling right now. It's the end of the semester for a lot of folks, which is a stressful time. It's a year after pandemic college, which is a hard time, and just a year into a pandemic, which has been stressful for a lot of people. So just take a moment and touch base with yourself and notice how you're feeling in this moment this evening. I also want to acknowledge that trauma can be a difficult topic for people to discuss. So if at any time you ever feel yourself getting upset, please do whatever you need to do to honor yourself and your body and do whatever you need to do in the moment. So if you're popping in and out of the Zoom room or you just need to finish and watch the recording later on, like that is perfectly okay. So we're going to start this evening with some perspective taking. Picture this. You're starting to have a disagreement with someone that you love. It starts out calmly, but as the conversation goes on, emotions get more and more intense. They've just said something that really rubbed you the wrong way. And more, you feel this rush come over you. You notice your heart beating faster. You notice that that you get hot and your hands may get sweaty. You're really overwhelmed. And you spend the next several minutes engaging with your partner in a competition of finding out who can speak the loudest, who can make the best points, who can talk over the other one, who can hurt the other one worse, maybe. And then you do it. Maybe it's word vomit. Maybe you punched a hole in a wall. Maybe you just can't do it anymore. And if you've ever been in a serious fight with someone that you love, who means a lot to you, or you've seen the Oscar-nominated Marriage Story with Scarlett Johansson and Adam Driver, you may know what this feels like. And it's not uncommon to get into these escalating, heated arguments with people that we love, but they can do some serious damage to our relationships and overall well-being. And usually after we've had time to calm down, think things over, we can see that the heated argument wasn't helpful in solving whatever issue was actually at hand. So the arousal of emotions that we often feel in these interactions is a function of one of the oldest systems in our bodies, the sympathetic nervous system. This is the system in our body that alerts us to and protects us from danger. Have you ever been in an acutely stressful situation like a car accident where you did things in the moment and you don't remember thinking about them, you just did them, and maybe you don't even remember what you did at all? Without needing us to think about it, the fight or flight response in the sympathetic nervous system floods our body and our brain with adrenaline and stress hormones and mobilizes us to take action when a threat is perceived. And this is really helpful when we're facing a real acute threat like a car accident or an animal attack. It helps us fight back, flee, or otherwise handle the situation so that we survive. Other times it's less helpful, like when we're in an interaction with our partner and they tell us something that we really don't like. Our emotions start to rise. And although we would like to keep calm and remain logical and stay with the activity in that part of our brain that helps us think logically and clearly and critically, the same types of processes are engaged. The fight or flight system is the process that's at work. So for some people, when the fight or flight system is engaged in these kinds of interactions, the situation looks like the situation from Marriage Story that I showed you earlier. Other times it looks like avoiding talking about a situation at all, storming out of the room. And neither one of these extremes is effective, right? They don't lead to effective communication and problem solving, but they are experiences that most people have had. So for some folks who grew up and whose nervous systems developed in a context of real and perceived threat due to adverse and traumatic childhood experiences, engagement of their fight or flight response can happen a lot more often and more quickly. Examples of adverse childhood experiences are child maltreatment, like abuse and neglect, as well as other household challenges such as parental mental illness, domestic violence, and substance abuse. More recently, the concept of ACEs has been expanded to include community level ACEs, such as witnessing violence and neighborhood adversity. So any chronic ongoing context where children feel unsafe and that their needs are not being met, it would be considered an adverse childhood experience. And these are actually pretty common in the US. So in the first wave from the original ACEs study, researchers found that 52%, so over half, of those participants in a mostly white and educated sample reported at least one adverse childhood experience, and 6% reported four or more. And these proportions are higher in more recent and more diverse samples. For example, some samples are showing that up to 20% of people have experienced four or more ACEs. And people who have higher economic and social challenges also tend to report more ACEs. So for these people who experienced ACEs and grew up in the context of toxic stress, their bodies are more likely to be on higher alert more often, or stuck on high arousal or stuck on low arousal, because these are the ways in which they adapted in their toxic environments growing up. And I have some short video clips that may help us understand this a little bit more. If anyone cannot hear this, if you could unmute and let me know, that would be great. So just take a few seconds to reflect on how that video made you feel. Just take a few seconds, any thoughts, feelings that come up for you. And if you just want to put a word or two in the chat, how that video made you feel. Lighthearted, adventurous, excited. Yeah, great. Same. I think a lot of people probably would say something similar. So now let's watch the second one. Happy, positive connotations, yeah. All right. That one's a little different, right? So take a second, maybe notice what your body even feels. Like my heart's beating a little fast after that one. Maybe pop some words in the chat about how that one made you feel. Yeah, so uncertain, vigilant, uneasy, nervous, or on edge, like you're just waiting for something to happen, right? Wary and nervous, yeah. So this is kind of how ACEs and trauma, from the perspective of nervous system development, influences people and specifically relationships. Trauma can change the background music of relationships. And research supports this idea. ACEs have been associated with lower relationship quality, higher relationship distress, separation and divorces, and even intimate partner violence, both perpetration and victimization. In a recent study of mine, I also found this to be true in over 1,000 participants in a couple relationship education study, and such that the more ACEs that participants reported, the lower their relationship quality was before the program. And this was even in the context of some other protective or resilience factors. But what if I told you that by practicing one thing for a few minutes, anywhere at any time, there was a way to better understand how your body automatically responds to emotional arousal that gave you the opportunity to hack into these automatic fight or flight responses that are intended to protect us and do, but sometimes interfere with our clear and logical thinking at the worst times. So based on the title of my talk, you know that thing is mindfulness. Mindfulness is the awareness that emerges through paying attention on purpose in the present moment and non-judgmentally to the unfolding of experience moment by moment. And by practicing mindfulness regularly, 10, 15 minutes, several times a week, can lead to this enhanced awareness. And I have a short animated video that's really fun that could explain this a little more.
You may have heard this word mindfulness. It's become something of a buzz phrase of late. So I'm going to give you one simple, serviceable definition, which is this. Mindfulness is the ability to know what's happening in your head at any given moment without getting carried away by it. Imagine how useful this could be. Just as an example, you're driving down the road and somebody cuts you off in traffic. How do you normally react? I think most of us, we normally react by having a thought, which is, I'm pissed. And then what happens next? You immediately, habitually, reflexively inhabit that thought. You actually become pissed. There's no buffer between the stimulus and your reaction. With just a little bit of mindfulness, in that same situation, you might notice my chest is buzzing, my ears are turning red, I'm having a starburst of self-righteous thoughts, I'm getting angry. But you don't necessarily have to act on it and chase that person down the road, screaming at them with your kids in the back of the car thinking you've gone nuts. Now, you might be thinking, don't I need to get angry sometimes? Aren't I justified? I would say yes, but probably not as much as you think. The proposition here is not that you should be rendered by mindfulness into some lifeless, non-judgmental blob. The proposition is that you should learn how to respond wisely to things that happen to you, rather than just reacting blindly. And that, my friends, is a superpower. How do you get it? The way to get it is through meditation. I believe that meditation and mindfulness are the next big public health revolution. In the 1940s, if you told somebody you were going running, they would have said, who's chasing you? But then what happened next? The scientists swooped in, They showed that physical exercise is really good for you. And now all of us do it. And if we don't, we feel guilty about it. And that's where I think we're headed with mindfulness and meditation. It's going to join the pantheon of no-brainers like brushing your teeth, eating well, and taking the meds your doctor prescribes for you. Let me just close by saying, mindfulness is not going to solve all of your problems. It's not going to render your life a nonstop parade of unicorns and rainbows. Nonetheless, this is a superpower, and one that is accessible by you immediately.
Get my slide back up. So yeah, we learned in the video that mindfulness gives you the opportunity to thoughtfully respond when you're upset versus simply reacting. And this can be a game changer in relationships, right? And research actually shows this too. So a recent meta-analysis of 12 studies shows that mindfulness is positively associated with higher relationship quality. And we can see why. I'll also let you in on a little secret. Throughout this presentation, at the beginning and after we watched the videos, when we paused to take a minute and to see what was going on for us in those minutes or how we reacted to those videos, that was mindfulness. So you can strengthen your mindfulness muscles through practicing, like Mr. Mouse said, meditation practices. There's a lot of different types of mindfulness practices. And I thought that we could try one today. So I invite you to find a comfortable position. It's recommended that people sit in a chair with their back straight and feet flat on the floor. But just find a comfortable position where you can sit up straight and feel your breathing. We will be focusing on our breath. The breath is the foundation of mindfulness practice. No matter where you are or what the practice or mindfulness activity is, you always have your breath to come back to. So if you feel comfortable, I invite you to close your eyes, and we'll just take a few moments to focus on our breathing. And I'll turn my camera off as to not distract. Take a few moments and bring awareness to your breath. You don't have to alter your breathing anyway. We're not doing deep breathing. Just notice your breath as it is naturally. If you get distracted from your breath, that is expected and perfectly okay. Just refocus back on your breathing. For some people, it's helpful to find one particular place in their body to focus on that's connected to their breath, like your stomach or your chest expanding and contracting. When your mind wanders, just refocus back on your breathing. And when you're ready, I invite you to open your eyes. I'll turn my video back on. We can finish up with our last two slides. Well, last few slides, excuse me. Through mindfulness practice, 10, 15 minutes every day, you can strengthen your ability to be more aware in the present day to day. And this skill, mindfulness, can be used to better understand when you're becoming upset, when a distressing event or trigger automatically sets off your autonomic nervous system response. By having practiced mindfulness, you can now start to notice how your body tells you it's starting to get upset and emotionally aroused. And this can lead to you learning more about, what upsets you and what sets you off. And those are things that you can talk about with your partner, and you both can grow through that. So in those moments, you may start to notice that you have a rush or tingly sensation of adrenaline and stress hormones. Your heart beats faster, you get hot, your hands may be sweaty. And because you strengthen that mindfulness muscle, you're better able to notice these. And now you have the choice to either one, continue thoughtlessly engaging in unhelpful ways, or take a break, find something to do to ground yourself so your body can come back to a feeling of safety, no matter what that is for you. So that could be going on a walk, listening to music, whatever it is that helps calm you down. Mindfulness gives you the choice. But you may ask, what about for those folks who have a history of ACEs, whose background music is different and whose fight or flight response may be engaged more quickly and more frequently? Does mindfulness work for them? And that answer is yes. On one hand, ACEs do tend to be associated with lower levels of mindfulness, but for people who do report ACEs, in addition to higher levels of mindfulness, those people actually report better health outcomes than folks with ACEs and lower levels of mindfulness. And so what about relationship outcomes? In another recent study of mine, in a sample of over 500 couples, I found that mindfulness was actually a stronger predictor of one's own and their partner's relationship quality than amount of ACEs were. And in fact, women's ACEs were not associated with their own or their partner's relationship quality when mindfulness is in the picture. So this is initial evidence that yes, mindfulness may offset risks that ACEs pose to relationships. And mindfulness is being incorporated into interventions and prevention programs for couples. So clinicians and practitioners often utilize mindfulness in couples therapy and couples relationship education. And so while initial evidence is hopeful that mindfulness may be able to buffer some negative effects of ACEs, we still have a lot to learn. Like how is mindfulness associated with relationship quality or relationship functioning over a long period of time for people who have ACEs? And some other potential research questions, like are there specific aspects or principles of mindfulness that may be more protective against ACEs? So for example, is it the awareness piece? Another principle of mindfulness is non-judging. Is it the non-judgment piece? And is this different for different types of ACEs? So we didn't measure community level ACEs in the studies that I conducted, but it's certainly worth, to look into if mindfulness is also protective against those for couples. So next steps for you as well. Mindfulness is a great tool for anyone, not just people with history of ACEs or trauma, to become more aware of emotional processes and how past experiences may influence our current relationships. And just in a few minutes every day is all it takes. Of course, mindfulness won't solve all of your problems. And if you have more serious trauma symptoms or PTSD, more comprehensive and intensive trauma treatment may be necessary. I've included some resources here, and I will take one moment to drop a resource list in the chat as well. Thank you all for coming, and I hope you've learned a little bit about trauma and mindfulness and how they can influence relationships. And I'm happy to discuss and answer any questions that you have.
Thank you so much, Erin. Everyone definitely grab the resource sheet. For the question and answer portion, we will stay muted and keep our video off, and just put questions in the chat. We've got a couple minutes to answer those. And I will start us off with a question while the rest of you are thinking. So you brought up some different types of mindfulness. I think you talked about like listening to music, but I was just wondering if you had other ideas. Um, I know sometimes for myself and for my clients, just sitting and listening to themselves breathe can be anxious. So I wonder if you had some other thoughts of mindful activities that aren't just listening to your breath.
Yeah, definitely. So, like I said, awareness of breath is one of the foundational mindfulness practices, because no matter where you are and no matter what activity you're doing, you always have your breath, right? You can always come back to your breath. And so, on one hand, I would say you can really be mindful and have a mindfulness practice anywhere at any time, whether it's noticing like a mindful walk, for example, is a really great practice. A body scan is another one. So there are guided meditations and some of the resources that I provided you, but also like if you just Google search or YouTube, body scan. A body scan is another really great one where you're shifting focus to and from different parts of your body just to notice how your body feels in the moment. And so that can be especially helpful to bring higher awareness to bodily sensations, and can be helpful for the context of when you're trying to learn your emotional responses, right? So mindful walking, body scan. Another one that I really love is called loving kindness. And so that's focused on cultivating positive relationships or positive thoughts and attitudes about yourself and about other people. So that's another one that I really like. But yeah, that's a great question and good point too, that sometimes it can be stressful for people to just sit and try to focus on the breath, which for a lot of people, for most people, I think is really hard to do, especially when you're starting out, but especially for people who may have more clinical levels of, anxiety and things like that.
Thank you. Eric asks, what strategies have you found helpful for discussing meditation or mindfulness with individuals who hold misconceptions about those terms?
Yeah, that is a great point. So I am at Auburn University and we are in Alabama. And so when a lot of this work was getting started here in this area, I've got some folks here who were around and were trailblazers when that was starting, like my advisor and some other folks. I think there was initial concern about, people around here tend to be really religious. And so mindfulness does have, in meditation, they have connotations to, or with a lot of Eastern religion. And so I think a strategy that seemed to be helpful is that just pointing to the research, right? Like this is research backed, and it doesn't have to have religious connotations. It's research backed and it's secular. So just being really clear about that. And I think that generally speaking, I think that people in this area had probably a more positive response to that than perhaps was initially expected.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. We have a couple more questions that we'll take. Brooklyn asked, can you say a little more about the cultivating of a positive mindset toward others? That sounds really interesting.
Yeah, like I said, loving kindness is one of my favorite mindfulness exercises. And so in some mindfulness exercises, people will use like affirmations or mantras to focus on, and that is kind of what they're focusing on during that mindfulness exercise. And so for loving kindness, what we'll do is have people first focus on, someone that, well, I won't say always first, but one part of the activity will be people will focus on someone that's really important to them. And we will have people in their mind's eye repeat mantras, may this and well wishes for that person specifically. So like, may this person be happy, may this person be well. And then in another part of that activity, we'll have people do may I be happy, may I be well. And so by focusing on these things and intentionally cultivating these positive attitudes and these positive thoughts and these well wishes toward people, that can have influences in, your day-to-day life.
Yeah, thank you. Lindy asks, would you recommend trying to engage in a lot of various mindful techniques, the same ones consistently, or some combination, or does it matter at all?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I I don't know the research specifically on this. I would say that it probably comes down to like what works for you. And I would wonder if like, some certain types of mindfulness activities would be better for whatever, your outcome you have in mind. For example, if I'm really focused on becoming more aware of like my bodily sensations and what my body's telling me in stressful moments, then it could be that a body scan would be more helpful for that. But I think overall, if you're just trying to cultivate more awareness in your day-to-day life, I would say that whatever mindfulness activities that you find are your favorite, work best for you, or easiest for you to do, you certainly don't want mindfulness practice to be a chore, right? So yeah, that's what I would say to that.
Yeah. And our very last question comes from Lindsay. If one part of a partnership is mindful, can it have the same effect as if both are?
That is a fantastic question. That's a fantastic question. I think the research jury may still be out on that one. The same effect, I don't know. I think that certainly like if one partner has higher levels of mindfulness or intentionally cultivates more mindfulness than the other one does, I think that that can certainly still benefit a relationship. It can still, even if one individual only does it, could still benefit the system. But would it have the same effect as if both do? Yeah, I don't know. I would think that best case scenario, both partners would be intentional about being mindfulness, right? But that's a great question.
Yeah. The research wheels in my head are turning. I imagine they're turning in your head as
Oh,
well. Some dyadic data. That'd be great to look into.
exactly.
Well, thank you all again for joining us tonight. This is, like I said, the last Real Talk for this semester, but we hope to do it again in the fall. If you are interested in our other talks from this semester, you can look up Relevate on YouTube or look us up on Facebook, and you can watch those other talks. They were amazing as well. And definitely watch your emails for a feedback survey from us. And thank you again, Erin.
Yes, thank you. Thank you everyone for coming out.